All the way back in 2019, I wrote an article in the National Interest about how the use of precision anti-tank weapons like the Javelin in anti-infantry and emplacement roles, as was regularly the case back then in Afghanistan, Iraq and Syria, was, well, kind of expensive. What was needed, I mused, was something cheap and easy to use, without the expensive warhead and guidance systems. As I put it, electrical components are now more efficient, cheaper, and far more resilient. This would make the building of these weapons, especially in large numbers as effectively a standard issue munition, extremely cheap, as in thousands of dollars rather than hundreds of thousands. So, yeah, I am calling a I told you so. But I will say this, I didn't imagine the sheer scale that drones would now be employed on, nor their lethality, especially when combined with first person view. This allows a remote operator to see via a camera in the drone and therefore fly it remotely. The use of cheap, essentially home built drones has changed the battlefield dynamic. In fact, I read an interview with a Ukrainian tank crew just the other day where they emphasised that a major factor in impeding armoured operations was the sheer quantities of drones employed by both sides. The drone has become to the Ukraine war practically what the machine gun was to World War I. Now, I should add, I don't see this remaining the status quo indefinitely. What we are seeing in Ukraine is the development in both drone and counter drone technology and tactics at breakneck speeds. But this is the latest iteration of that eternal fight that militaries have waged since the first spears and shields were fashioned. No, what I want to talk about is the threat that drones represent in a domestic security situation, with emphasis on the protection of important personnel. And I want to use a couple of current events to highlight the risk factors. The assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Now, I am not going to weigh into the politics of that issue, nor the various conspiracy theories. I want to use them as a case study. Naturally, the use of drones to attack an important figure has already been used in the plots of movies. In the film Angel Has Fallen, we are treated to the spectacle of a drone swarm attack on the American president, played by Morgan Freeman, and his protection detail. I'll be honest, when I saw the clip, I was impressed by the notion, because if you want to wipe out a target in a public place, then a drone swarm seems like a pretty good option, if a bit of a sledgehammer in the case depicted. But in the film, the instigator of the attack has massive resources at their disposal. I am not talking about some high-end attack orchestrated by powerful interests with legions of mercenaries and millions of dollars to call upon. I am talking about that prospect which keeps security details up at night. The lone wolf. Here we come to recent events. Now, as you're watching this video, I'm guessing I don't need to go into all the deep details about them. Suffice to say, on July 13th, 2024, an individual armed with an AR-15 rifle got to about 120 metres of the former president at a campaign rally and was able to take 8 shots, grazing Trump's ear and hitting 3 rally members, one of whom tragically died. The shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was killed about 16 seconds after he began shooting. The second event is still under investigation, and as a result, the actual details are subject to clarification. But here is the currently accepted course of events. On September 15, 2024, a man identified as Ryan Wesley Routh was spotted by Secret Service agents lurking in bushes on the perimeter of the Trump International Golf Club, where the former president was playing. Routh was armed with an SKS rifle and was engaged at long range by USSS agents with pistols. He fled the scene and was later arrested. Both these cases show one thing, that even someone quite frankly delusional is capable of getting within rifle range of a high priority target like Donald Trump. Now, institutions like the US Secret Service have always known that was the case and tried to plan accordingly, and in these two cases, in one, security did its job well, identified the threat, and dealt with it before it could endanger the subject, while the other was, let's be blunt, a titanic screw-up, and the defenders got lucky. Though it also demonstrates, particularly in Crook's case, that even if you are able to get close enough to the prospective target, making that shot isn't like in some video game. And though I say it myself, this is a subject I know something about. Regular viewers of the channel will probably know this already, but for those that don't, I have been to some interesting places and done some interesting things. Included in that was time spent in Syria fighting against ISIS, where I was a sniper. To be blunt, I know more about pulling triggers on live targets than most. Shooting a target requires skill, practice, and the right gear, and even then, it is easy to screw it up. Ask any experienced shooter if they put the round in the right place when they shoot every time. It doesn't happen, even in ideal conditions on a range. That's why when you zero a gun, you write off the flyer. In 5 rounds, you've got a good chance of one just being an oddball. Now imagine you are committing to making a shot on an actual person, something you've probably never done before, and you will likely only get the one shot because you are going to get killed in short order by their security. Try to imagine the pressure that is on you in that situation. Now, as I've said, I have a fair bit of experience of making long-range shots in combat situations, and I am going to be totally honest. I would not be confident on making that shot. But a drone, well, that's easy, isn't it? And that is what makes a drone so dangerous. It is remote from the scene. You are not in immediate danger. Plus, there is something not real about flying into a figure on a screen compared to looking at them in person, I'm sure. Heck, you probably aren't close enough to even see the explosion, especially if you're using something equipped with an FPV camera. Remember Thomas Crooks, who nicked Trump's ear? He actually flew a drone over the shooting site just a little over 2 hours before he made his attempt. Now, Crooks evidently was using the drone to conduct reconnaissance of the area and plan his approach and setup, which is pretty smart thinking. But he was one idea away from coming up with what I am warning about today. Come on, Ed, I hear you say. Surely the Secret Service and all the others have thought of this and deployed jammers to protect VIPs. Oh, I'm sure they do. At least I hope they do. But that brings us back to Ukraine. I have had quite a few friends pass through that war zone, and the thing they tell me is that it is a constant cat and mouse game with drone warfare. As soon as you think up something, the other guys comes up with something to counter it. This has been going on for 2 years now, and it is still evolving at a day-by-day pace. Jamming drones means you need to be operating on their specific frequency. If you are not, even just marginally off, it doesn't matter to them. Plus, now drones are not necessarily operating on radio transmissions. We are now seeing drones running off fibre cables, which spool out. Yes, that can limit their range, but it means they are unjammable. And this is far from a new innovation. Cable-linked drones have been used for years because they are signal secure, don't need batteries, and can basically stay on station indefinitely, meaning they have been used for base and convoy security for a while. Okay, their use as weapons of attack does mean they are limited by the range of the cable spool, but both the Ukrainians and the Russians are deploying these now, which reminds me of something else I said in that national interest article. In fact, off-the-shelf components and technology, such as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, offer the possibility of secure electronic communications between a guidance unit and a remote relay box that controls missiles. Have you ever seen that film The Jackal? Not the good one, the one with Bruce Willis. In that, he uses a remote control machine gun to try to kill the First Lady. In fact, in a case of life mimicking art, the Israelis used that exact same method to kill Iran's top nuclear scientist in 2020. They placed a remote-controlled machine gun in an abandoned car on the route that they knew the guy took regularly, and when he passed by, a gunner, located, as the Israelis put it, several thousand miles away, shot his car and him to pieces. Now, this operation was complicated by having to sneak a literal ton of complex machinery, as well as a machine gun, into Iran, and then having agents assemble and place it. But imagine that operation now. They wouldn't need all that. An assassin could just deposit his cable-fed drone within range of its spool, maybe some convenient rooftop within a kilometre, even out of sight of the target zone, and then activate it and fly it to where you want it to go when you need to. All from a nice safe location far away. And if you think that's bad, wait until I tell you about a couple of other possibilities. Firstly, we are well into the time where flying drones are autonomously killing humans. In fact, I did a video on this a while back. In 2020, a Turkish-built Kargu 2 drone, which is essentially an autonomous flying claymore mine, allegedly hunted down and killed opposition soldiers in Libya. Now, as a number of folks pointed out in the comments on that video, anti-submarine torpedoes and air-to-air missiles have been essentially doing the same thing for a while. What's the big deal? Well, the deal is that you can send a Cargo 2 out on patrol, and if it finds something it considers worthy, it will attack it. It uses high-definition cameras to identify potential targets and complex algorithms to analyse and determine if this is worth expending itself on. The thing is, that sort of tech is pretty much now available to high-end hobby nerds. Imagine developing an autonomous drone, which packs a small warhead and a range of, 5 kilometers one way. You fit it with a small flight computer in which you program a specific site to target, one you've already got a picture of from a previous flyover, long before security was paying too much attention. Heck, we're getting to the stage where you could probably program it to recognize an individual face and target that. And then all you have to do is, at the right time, set the damn thing off on its way. I mean, I think you see why I titled this as We Need to Talk. But wait, there's more. Do you know what this is? It's the new Starlink Mini, which released to remarkably small amounts of hype, an incredible bit of kit that means you can literally backpack a 4G connection into anywhere on the planet. Personally, I think it's amazing. Probably will get one myself. But you know my first thought when I saw it for the first time? Satellite guidance system. Okay, I am no Starlink nor drone expert, but I am pretty sure I know several people who could take this, fit it into an admittedly fairly substantial UAV, and then you have a drone that you can personally control anywhere in the world. The point I am trying to make is that I don't believe that the sort of knowledge to do this is not exactly untypical nowadays, not just in the civilian sector generally, but down to the hobbyist level. In fact, we have kind of seen an early precursor to this sort of thing, all the way over in Burma, also known as Myanmar. On April 4th this year, one of the forces fighting against the military junta launched an air attack against the army's actual headquarters in the capital Naypyidaw itself. Now, the attack doesn't seem to have been particularly successful from the point of view of destroying the facility, though damage was reportedly inflicted. It mainly seems to have been a way of rattling the junta by showing them that they are never safe from attacks, even in the very centre of their power. And what really needs to be remembered about this is that those drones were made in jungle camps. Their guidance was comparatively primitive and cheap off-the-shelf components found in hobby shops. And they were able to deliver ordnance into one of the most heavily protected cities on the planet. Imagine what the folks who built these are going to be able to do in 5 years' time. Now imagine an individual with an interest in remote flying, a hobby you can learn how to do from watching YouTube videos, who then gets politically motivated. Because there have been plenty of other wackos who have made their move. You just rarely hear about them. Again, to use Trump as an example. In 2016, someone tried to wrestle a gun off a police officer at a campaign rally, intending to use it to kill Trump, who wasn't even president then. In 2017, someone stole a forklift and, when arrested, confessed to having taken it with a view to trying to ram it into the president's car. In 2018 and 2020, people tried to send him rice in the post. Now we can add the 2 incidents this year to that. Honestly, if this all shows something, it's that the world will never be short of nutjobs, and some of them have some very worrying skill sets. Okay, so if we admit that what I've been rambling about may be an issue, how about protection for the VIPs? Firstly, if anyone out there is under the illusion that bodyguards can shoot down a fast-moving drone, take it from someone who has tried to do that on multiple occasions. It ain't easy. I mean, it is possible, but really hard. More luck than skilled shooting. So what about passive defensive measures? VIPs in public often have protective screens around them to stop things like bullets, right? I refer you back to those Russian and Ukrainian tanks. Yes, tanks. Those things famous for being really heavily armoured. And yet the Russians have gone to the expedient of turning many of theirs into mobile barns, the so-called turtle tanks, to try to protect them from the threat of drones, while the Ukrainians are also covering theirs, including their latest Western tanks, hugely armoured behemoths already, with all sorts of mesh and webbing to try to give them some more standoff capability for the same reason. 2 military powers are currently struggling to figure out how to protect their critical equipment from drones and have yet to find a satisfactory solution. Do you suppose that the various protective agencies whose job it is to protect VIPs are committing the same level of resources to what I am suggesting here? How about the private protective agencies, whose job it is to protect private citizens and celebrities? Hence, we need to talk. Or at least they really need to start getting worried.